Hi, well, I'm joined today by Mick Colliss, who's most likely got one of the best rugby podcast sites in the world of rugby. And I've been on there on one occasion and thoroughly enjoyed myself. So I just thought I'd catch up with Mick to find out what might be a few of his secrets, any pointers that he may be able to give me. He's across in Western Australia. Um, they say the West is best. I'm not quite sure at the moment what you think. I'll ask you about that in a minute. Yeah, but g'day, Mick. How are you?
Moff, very good. And yeah, always nice to catch up with you.
Yeah. So, as I said, I've just ventured into this podcasting world. Just like ask you a couple of questions. What do you use to record your podcasts?
Well, it's funny. So we started doing the Rugby Wrap is the podcast that I've got, and we started doing that. So the Western Force got kicked out of Super Rugby and was starting their global rapid rugby. So we thought there's obviously a very strong supporter base for rugby over here. So we thought we'd do a podcast. So I got Mitch Hardy, who's a former Wallaby that lives over here in Perth now, and Heath Tessman, who was playing at the time and was kind of transitioning away from rugby. So the three of us decided we'd do the podcast. And when we first started, we just used a room up at the Western Force offices. I bought a little podcast microphone, and the three of us sat around a table to do the podcast. And we'd done that about twice, and then COVID hit, and we weren't allowed to sit in the same room as each other. So we thought that was going to be the shortest podcast in the history of rugby. But then we discovered, like a lot of people have discovered, Zoom and different online platforms. So we started to do it via Zoom. And now, even though we're actually able to sit in the same room, we actually prefer not being in each other's company. And we decided to keep doing it with Zoom. But we have done a couple. We've done a couple in front of a live studio audience where we've taken some gear out and done it at a corporate office, which was that was run by Rugby Network Australia. So we were sort of the guest act, and we hosted a panel which became our podcast. So yeah, so to cut a very long story short, we now use Zoom because it records for us, and it's a pretty handy little piece of software.
Yeah, I mean, and I've landed on Zoom after trying a couple of other places, and it seems to work okay. I get little tips from various people on how to use it. The first one I did with Sean Fitzpatrick, which is up on my YouTube site. I didn't realize that you could actually set up side by side. So, anyway, I'm now got that sorted out.
Yeah, we're still learning as we go. It's funny. Yeah, I'm certainly not technologically advanced, and neither is Tessman or Mitch Hardy. So we stumble along.
Say good day to the boys from me too. I mean,
I will do.
They're good guys.
Yeah.
So do you live stream, or do you record and then send it out?
Yeah, so at this stage, we recorded a Wednesday, which is handy because the teams get announced on the Wednesday. So we were able to sort of run through the teams. And at this stage, we just do the audio. So again, Zoom, it records it all for us. And so we just get the file, and then I chop that up. So I put a bit of intro music into it, and we've got a couple of little promotions that we do. So there's a bit of music sting just during it. But we don't live stream. Again, that's something we've thought about doing, but we're not sure how to do that at this stage.
Neither am I. I don't want to go there,
Yeah, and I think we pretty much run it like I don't edit it at all, apart from putting the music at the start and end. But if we stuff up, like last night, I stuffed up. I was reading out the wrong week in terms of previewing the following weekend's games, and I had the wrong week, so I cut that out and we redid that. But generally, it's pretty much as it is. So it's very rough and ready. But we don't. A lot of people do the video side of it as well. We haven't been game to do that yet. And sometimes, Heath Tessman, he likes getting the guns out and wearing singlets, and we think we've got to have a dress. We've got to have a dress standard. So if we get our act together in terms of what we're wearing, we might do a couple where we actually record it, and because Zoom does record the pictures as well. And we might stick it up on a YouTube channel, as you suggested, and maybe have that as every now and then for a special time we might record it and show our ugly faces.
Well, I mean, if Heath's that way inclined, you might increase the number of women followers, mate, if you put it on video.
That's true. Yeah, that's exactly right.
So what do you use to edit it then? After
so there's so there was Audacity, which I started using first, which is a really good program for sound. And then there's another one called, I found a thing called Mixpad, because Audacity kept crashing on me. And I don't know whether, I think it was just my computer, but it's a thing called Mixpad, Mixpad. And you buy that. Again, it's not a massive expense. And because we just do the audio. So it's this great program. You just drop the audio in and you can sort of cut it and slide stuff around. Again, I'm learning as I go, but it seems to be a pretty easy way to do it. And when you load a clip, and then it says load a recent clip, so any of those music stings, you don't have to try and find them again. That sort of holds it in its memory somewhere and just and drops in. So what I find Mixpad is the thing that I use just to chop it up, and then it just lets you save as an MP3, and then Buzzsprout is the platform or the hosting platform that we upload our sound file onto, and it send it out to all the places it's meant to go to.
Oh yeah, I use RSS. Which is not the actual RSS that we normally think about, but it's just an organization which is like Buzzsprout. And they say, because I actually do videos, but I also I've got a little audio thing which you just drop the video into it and it'll take the audio out for you and make it into an MP3. So I've spent a bit of time cruising around the internet, and I'm actually enjoying it. Really, it's good fun. It
is good fun. It is good fun. It's a good excuse to catch up with some mates or catch up with someone, an interesting guest that you wouldn't normally get to spend some time with, and you have a half-hour chat about rugby or whatever it might be. It's it's great fun.
Yeah, absolutely. On Rugby Matters, how are the Force going this year?
I'd say that they're not living up to the expectation that we had. I think everyone got pretty excited last year with the Western Force making that the semi-final for the first ever time, and we thought that they'd build on that, but they haven't really been able to put together a full 80 minutes. Again, it's been, COVID's been hard for everyone, but it's kind of when the Force went away and then they weren't sure how long they're going to be on the road for, then they've come back and then they've had to go back across the East Coast again. So it's been a bit disruptive, but look, they're a team they're used to adversity. They've had that the last couple of years. So I just think they can't seem to play for 80 minutes. And, we saw even against the Waratahs last week, they're good in phases and they can hang in there, but they just can't. I don't know. They haven't put a game together. I think when they do, they'll be good, but at the moment they can't do it. And they still, they can't execute things properly. They give themselves opportunities, but then they don't, take points when they're on offer. And so as from a fan's point of view, it's a bit frustrating because we know that they can play well, but at the moment they're just not playing as well as we'd like them to play.
But they're not the worst performing team, are they, from Australia at the moment? I think that accolade goes to
I think the Rebels
the Rebels
have got that one sewn up, which is. But again, the Rebels. This year they're not playing well, but in the past couple of years they've been pretty good. They're almost the Western Force bogey side because the Force had a lot of trouble trying to beat the Rebels and times when they've needed to win to make the semi or make the four, whatever it might have been. The Rebels have always beaten them, but luckily this year the Western Force did beat them. But the Rebels going through a bit of a tough spot at the moment. But I think we want to see all the Australian teams going well. No one wants to see a team that's when you're playing them, you think, oh great, that's the bye for us this week. We're going to pick up the points. So you want all teams to be competitive, and I think the Brumbies are certainly the standard at the moment. The Reds are pretty good. Then probably the Waratahs Force are pretty even at the moment.
So the perennial question that's asked, and Fitzy even alluded to it when I was talking to him yesterday, is the number of teams that Australia has. If you talk to Ben Darwin, which I know you have, you've had him on your show, and he looks at a whole range of matrices, and you come to the inescapable conclusion, I think, that Australia has got too many teams. Where do you sit on that? Oh, sorry. I should just before I ask you to answer that question, I have been on record, and I might have even said it when I was on your show, that I believe Australia's got too many teams, but one of the teams that should not go is the Western Force, right? Because for a whole lot of reasons. One, it's very strong there. Two, you've got a good backer in, in the guy that's
Andrew Forrest.
Andrew Forrest, Twiggy. I'm wearing, now that he owns an outfitter, I'm actually wearing one of those shirts.
R.M. Williams, nice.
R.M. Williams shirt, but it's in the New South Wales colours. So, do you have a view?
Yeah, look, and Ben Darwin, he was one of our favourite guests. He's just a fascinating guy, and all those matrix and indices and the figures and the stats and the cohesion that he talks about. He was great. We could have spoken to him for hours. He was a really interesting fella. But in terms of the teams, I think that Australia needs 5 teams only because the code in Australia is shrinking. There's no doubt about that. We're competing against AFL and we compete against the NRL. So if rugby's footprint needs to be as big as it can be, and we're only talking about 5 professional teams, NRL's got, what have they got, 14 or 16 teams. The AFL is similar. So all rugby is asking for is 5. And I think we should be able to pull together 5 teams, and if we can't, well, there's a problem that the code is doing something wrong in terms of recruiting kids to play the game, and then the code's doing something wrong in terms of trying to hang on to the kids to keep playing the game. So 5 teams is not a lot of teams when we're talking about an entire code in a country the size of Australia, and I think.
Sorry, mate. No, I was going to say it is a lot of teams when in schools the game's really only played in the GPS schools in New South Wales and Queensland, a little bit, but not much in Victoria. I don't know about the Western Australian scene in respect of schools, but and of course the ACT, it's played in some schools there. But the number of schools that play it, and the participation in those schools is dropping because a lot of those schools now are playing other sports and they're giving them much more choice. My son went to Shore, and so I know how many rugby teams they had back in his day and how many they've got now. So when you've got a shrinking pool to choose from, it's difficult. Yeah,
it is. But and I think they've got to look at why have those numbers of teams dropped off? What's caused those teams like Shore to not to have the firsts from the first right down to the tenths, whatever it might, in the first 15, right down all those A through to K, whatever it might be. So why has that happened? Because there's obviously a problem. Because as when I was going through school, there was a competition called the Waratah Shield, which was a massive schoolboy competition in New South Wales. I don't even know if that exists anymore. And there was 100-something schools played in that thing. So
I used to referee it, mate. I used to referee that stuff, and I always knew when I was refereeing one of the state schools, because they'd look at me and they'd say, "Sir, which side do you want me to put the ball into the scrum?" but no, you're right. The Waratah Shield, it was terrific. I used to enjoy refereeing it. It was during the week, it was in between weekends, but so many issues, aren't there, surrounding the reasons behind that.
Yeah, and even club footy. So I grew up in Eastwood, so I went to Morris Brothers Eastwood, which was a rugby league school. We played in the MCC competition against St Pat's of Campbelltown, or St Greg's Campbelltown, and St Patricia Brothers Fairford, all the good league schools. But all the guys playing rugby league played rugby union on the weekend because we're in the Eastwood district, and the guys played for. And in my local, I think there was 5 junior clubs in Eastwood. There was Hillview, Central Eastwood, Epping, Beecroft, whatever it might have been. Now I think there might be one, if that. There might not be any junior clubs. I think there might be one. So you've got to look at how has rugby let that happen. And I think if we take away one of the professional teams, you're shrinking that footprint even further. I think you've got to have a few years of pain hanging on to those 5 teams, and then again build from the bottom up to fill those teams, as opposed to cutting those professional teams and be content with a smaller number of feeder teams. For me, it's got to come the other way around. You've got to just put up with the pain, but then work on that bottom line, that bottom base of that pyramid, to then fill those 5. Because I know that there are enough kids in Australia to fill those 5 teams. We've just got to get them playing rugby.
Playing rugby. So out there in the West, I don't want you to get into politics, but how difficult has it been over there with the complete lockdown of?
It's been very interesting because I mean, a lot of people have spoken about, WA should secede from the rest of the country anyway, and that's what it's honestly felt like that for the last 2 years, because you haven't been able to leave the place, and then you haven't been able to get back in. So it has been locked off. And look, and I can understand our COVID has been, compared to the rest of the country, has been amazing in terms of the number of cases, the number of deaths, the number of people in hospital. It has been fantastic, but it did get to the point where we needed to learn to live with it. And that's where we're doing that now, but still we're under restrictions. And even the confusing thing about it, which is the main frustration was, we were meant to open on the 5th of February. And then when Mark McGowan's come out and called it a late night press conference on a Thursday night just before February 5, everyone's gone, oh, here we go. Yeah. And then he's announced that we're not opening and it's indefinite. And that's where he lost a lot of voters then, because up until that point, all leaders have to make decisions that not everyone's happy with. And this guy led, and I'll give him credit because he led despite all the abuse he was getting. He said, This is what we're doing, and I'm the leader, and this is what we're doing. And so all respect to him. But then when he changed his mind on that February 5, that's where a lot of people thought, oh, now, mate, you're taking the piss, because it's just become all about you, even though it wasn't, but that's how it seemed. Yes, so even with rules, so there's the Rottnest swim, which is a swim from Cottesloe across to Rottnest Island. That went on about maybe 4 weeks ago. Last weekend, then the new restrictions have come on once he's opened up, saying you can't have more than 500 people at an outdoor event. So on the weekend was the State Surf Lifesaving Championships, and Surf Lifesaving themselves in their own report wrote that there was 1,000 competitors, and that went ahead. This weekend, there's meant to be another swim called the Port to Pub, which is from Fremantle to Rottnest. Yeah. That's been cancelled because it's got too many people that are meant to be on the beach at the same time. But on the same weekend is the Nippers Junior Surf Lifesaving State Championships, which is probably going to have 1,000 people as well. So there's so much inconsistency. And then you can have 30,000 people at Optus Stadium to watch the West Coast Eagles play, but you can't have 500 people on a beach to do a swim in the morning. So there's a lot of frustration. There's anger, which is probably a little bit too far, but there's frustration just at the inconsistencies with the rulings about what you can and can't do. But look, now the borders are open. It's a lot better because you can jump on a plane. I'm going to Sydney tomorrow. It's nice to be able to, if you need to get away, you can get away and then come back without the whole 14 days of quarantine. So it's been a pretty tough couple of years, but as Mark McGowan keeps saying, the number of deaths that we've had has been minimal. And, if it's a loved one that's been kept alive, well, you can't really, blame him for the decisions he's made. No,
except that there's this sort of hidden cost of it. And that is the number of people who may have committed suicide, the families that are broken up.
Oh, the mental,
and all the mental health issues and all that sort of
stuff
thing.
You don't see.
Nobody mentions it. And that's one of the big issues that we have here in New Zealand, because we are still locked down in this place. Although now she's changed her mind and she's going to open it up because she's down to around about 30% in the polls. So the only thing that's changing in here are the polls.
There's the polls.
That's
I know. Yeah, I mean that mental health side, is especially for people that are isolated and don't have family that want to get to them and not being able to. Look, I'm lucky. Mine have all moved across here to Perth, so I'm very lucky in that regard. But I can imagine it would have been extremely difficult, especially if you're young. You had a baby, your first baby, or there's some horror stories about people that couldn't get across to a funeral, or there was a young kid committed suicide and the parents weren't allowed to go across and bring their child home. Horrible stuff like that. But it's
there's a huge cost of that stuff. So, mate, just last point. I actually managed to get across about a year ago, I think. I was looking at a sort of a business thing with the Optus Stadium.
Yep.
Mate, that is a magnificent stadium.
It is.
It's beyond
fantastic.
Awesome, mate. It's just Phenomenal.
And it's such a, I mean, it was very controversial when Colin Barnett, the former premier, decided to build it. Because everyone, you're always going to get knuckleheads saying, "Oh, we should be spending the money on hospital, schools, whatever," which is true. But you need a good stadium. You just need one. And it went ahead, and the location of it's fantastic near down on the river in that precinct where the casino and the hotels are, and the ground itself. You're right. It's just a brilliant place to watch sport. And we went to the Bledisloe that was played here. The first one must have been 2019. It might have been now. The first one where Australia had that crazy game where they destroyed the All Blacks, even though they're down to 14 men. We don't worry about that. Australia just smashed the All Blacks. And we were going to go to, there's a pub called the Campfield, which is the largest pub in the Southern Hemisphere, just outside the ground. And we got to the ground early before the gates opened. We were going to go to the Campfield, but the Campfield was packed. So we thought, we'll go into the ground when the gates open. So we went into the ground, and all the way through the ground, there's all these little different bars and eateries that you can meet and sit at, have your beer, and you can just wander out and still see the ground, and then come back in, and it's easy to get around. The seating's great. It's a really steep, even though it's circular, it's very steep. So you're actually quite close to the ground, even for a rectangular configuration. So, I mean, and I had mates come across from the East Coast to watch that Bledisloe game, and they just walked away thinking that oval and that ground is magnificent. And it's a real credit to the state government and the architects and everyone that pulled it together, because it's a brilliant venue.
I've been having discussions with them about a business idea, which is, you'd be aware of these sort of shared office spaces, right?
Yes,
that you can just go and rent and things like that.
Yep.
One of the best venues for doing that would be the corporate boxes in somewhere like not only that stadium, but all stadiums all around the world. And
correct.
So we're sort of looking at that. It's because of COVID, it's been put on hold a bit, but yeah. So if you're coming to going to Perth and you're looking for an office to rent for the day or something, you can go there and you can overlook the ground.
And what a great place, because I've been to a couple of functions there. And when you get to the ground, even when it's empty, it's just a function. But there's just something special about that venue when you're looking out at those seats, the grass and the goalposts. It'd be a fantastic place. It's a great idea. If you need a WA representative, Moff, I'm available. So keep me in mind.
I will, no doubt about that, mate. Listen, it's been fantastic talking to you. I found out a bit about how you do your podcasting and a bit about rugby in Western Australia. So, I'll get this edited and we'll get it up on YouTube. I'll let you know when I can get that done. Thank you.
And mate, we'll look forward to having you back on the Rugby Wrap, because you're an interesting bloke to talk to, and I would like to find out more about your 11s and how that's progressing. So we'll certainly be returning the favour in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, mate, no problems. And I will send the stuff to 11s when I get off here.
Perfect. Thanks, Moff. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, and great to talk to you too, mate. Bye.